Greetings, visionaries. This is your host, the INFJ Visionary. And today I thought we would talk about the concept of having a creed. That's an interesting word, and it was probably more popular in the old days. A lot of times, well, you know what? Let's start off with a definition. How about that? We went to merriam-webster.com, and the definition is two. Number one definition is a brief authoritative formula of religious belief, as in the Nicene Creed. Number two, a set of fundamental beliefs or a guiding principle. For example, never settling for mediocrity was his creed. Okay, so that's a pretty good, that'll get us going. Obviously, the religious definition, totally valid, but I'm not a religious dragon. I've tried, yeah, but yeah, ultimately that doesn't work for me. What does work for me, though, is having my own set of beliefs. And if you've been with me any time at all, you know that I really think it's pretty important not to actually believe in anything other than the fact that you exist. Everything else is open to question. However, you're not going to be able to avoid entertaining a set of beliefs. And you have complete control over that, and it's important that that set of beliefs be in line with who you are as a person, and maybe even more importantly, who you want to be. So, if you do have some sort of creed and you find that you're not acting in accordance with it, I guarantee your life is absolutely a pile of debris, and it's not going to amount to much of anything that's going to interest you or anyone else. So now you might go, well, that's all great. Thank you, visionary, for that, but I really don't know what sort of creed I should have. You just told me don't believe in anything, so what am I supposed to do? Well, I don't think most INFJs will have that problem. I think most INFJs tend to be somewhat philosophically inclined. Obviously, some more than others, but philosophy becomes very important because philosophy is your way of parsing reality, your way of understanding it, your way of deciding what is and is not important about reality, and what trends are significant and what you can ignore. So, if you don't have a creed, maybe cobble one together. Let's give you some good examples, like don't lie. Don't lie to yourself, especially, but don't lie to other people either. If you embrace something like that as part of your personal creed, your life's going to be better. Just straight up. People will trust you. And importantly, if you have the habit of lying to yourself, which is incredibly destructive, I don't know how many people listening to this broadcast would have that problem or be inclined to, because people that lie to themselves tend to have a whole different basis for living their lives. Yeah, sorry, getting some interruptions from the temple guardians here. Um, let's see, let's think of a few other good ones. Like, the don't lie, that's a good one. Don't steal, don't take stuff that's not yours. Why? Well, you could say, well, geez, it's one reality, and we all have access to this and that and the other thing. Who's to say private property is a real thing? And, from a philosophical standpoint, we could definitely make an argument that the whole idea of private property is essentially an idea that came about with the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago, and the fact that people started staying in one spot instead of roaming around. They started growing their food as crops and things, which is actually incredibly destructive to our physiology, but a topic for another channel, perhaps. Either way, it doesn't really matter because we're living in this culture. This is basically a Western-based culture, a culture based on agriculture and property. And the thing is, if something does belong to someone else and you take it, you have compromised yourself, and you are going to, first of all, experience guilt, most likely, since you're going counter to the deep programming that you would have received as a young person or dragon, as the case may be. And this is going to create a lot of unbalance in your life. It's just a fact that criminals don't prosper. Okay, so no lying, no stealing. What else? How about stop feeling guilty? Okay, and this is a huge one for INFJs because quite often we do, and the reason for this, I think, is because of the extroverted feeling component of our existence and how it can conflict with the introverted intuition. Many times, our internal guide in the form of intuition will be telling us to go one way or the other, but people in our lives definitely have a strong preference that we do something else. And if we don't conform to what they want us to do, we could experience guilt. And what I would have to say about that is that well, in the case of family, you're not going to be able to replace those people. But if it's not family, you don't need those. You don't really need those people in your life. You need people in your life that want you to be happy and support you in so much as they want you to go the direction in your life that you want to go. And this is another thing that would tie into a creed. What is it that what is the purpose of existence? What is it that you think you should be doing with your life? Now, it doesn't have to be anything heavy. You could just be wanting to have a nice day every day and enjoy yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. In so much as some people are going to be more satisfied with this sort of existence than others. Personally, I would have to do something. I would have to make something or create something in order to be happy and fulfilled. That's part of my personal creed. And, well, let's just go further with that. Say you're creating things, you're making things, and now you have a bunch of things. What are you going to do? You're going to hope that people like your things. Now, it depends on what you're making. Maybe you're making knives, for example. You're making handmade knives. You're probably going to have a pretty good reception to that. Perhaps you're making art, but you may have a decent reception to that as well, depending on the art. And part of my personal creed is that when I create artwork or when I create something like this broadcast, I don't want to overly tailor it to the audience because that corrupts it. It's a corrupting influence, and we could probably talk about that for the last quarter of the video. It's a hugely corrupting influence to tailor what it is that you do specifically for an audience. And a lot of times what happens is people start off with a certain motivation or idea of what it is they want to do, and then they get some response, and then they start paying attention to the response, and then they notice, of course, that and YouTube is huge on this, by the way. It gives me the option of having multiple titles or multiple images for each video because obviously you're going to click on something based on the title and the image. And you know, I'm not completely immune to this sort of thing, although I've this channel's been great, and then it's allowed me to play with it quite a lot, as opposed to maybe some of the other endeavors that I'm involved with that may have some commercial viability. This channel is just done to express myself, number one, and number two, communicate and make contact with other INFJs and pass along insights that come to me through the introverted intuition matrix. That's the purpose of the channel. Now, if I got confused, it might be a lot more like other INFJ channels where I start thinking, oh, well, I've got to talk about some INFJ specific stuff. You know, people are hungry to learn more about what is and creates an INFJ. And I have touched on some of that, but frankly, yeah, steady diet of that, who cares? I don't need it. That's not what I want to do. And so I don't do it. And so part of my creed is to try to communicate and express myself authentically in a way that I do feel is valuable. But if people aren't listening and aren't paying attention, I'm okay. I'm just going to go on to the next thing. And I think that's appropriate. So That's a few ideas on the idea of creed. And creed used to be more popular as a concept, but I think it's important, and definitely one of the major ways you can improve your life is by addressing your own personal creed and acting in accordance with it. That's it for today, INFJ. See you in a couple more. Meanwhile, keep on keeping on.